All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Rud's Room. I know it's been a while since I've done one of these, but life happens sometimes. Good things, bad things take up time. And I haven't had an opportunity to be on for a while. I know my last episode, I didn't do a whole lot. I shared with you the audio from JD Prescott's town hall up here in Jay County. Um, I'd like to clarify something on that. I think I kind of did last time, maybe the episode before, but I've mentioned before that JD Prescott doesn't hold public town halls. And I've had people contact me and say, but he held one in Muncie and I was there. And I said, well, it was it open to the public? Well, it was open to members of this or that organization. That's not a public town hall. If you're not opening it up to every constituent who wants to attend, you're not letting them know about it. You're holding it in secret, and it's only to select members of organizations that donate to your campaign. I wouldn't call that a public town hall. I wouldn't call that transparency, and I wouldn't call that being a good representative. That's just my opinion, but I'm sticking to it. So, back to what I was saying, the last episode I did was I gave a little introduction and played for you the town hall that Jay Prescott did in Portland, Indiana. Uh, I was unable to attend that because, again, sometimes life happens. Um, and I didn't have a lot of notice for that one either. This was a town hall that was sponsored by the Indiana Farm Bureau. They are donors to JD Prescott's campaign. They have also endorsed him multiple times. So he's obligated, or perhaps feels obligated, to attend events that they invite him to. So he was willing to do that. Uh, those are typically invite only and to members of the Indiana Farm Bureau. The only reason I even knew it happened was because I emailed JD Prescott 6 times asking him to please let me know, because he said he always holds public town halls everywhere, every session, that I'm a liar. So I said, okay, if I'm a liar, then when is the public town hall? I'd love to be there. That's great. I got questions for you. I'd like to hear updates and know what's going on. And so he told me about it. I further asked him, well, that one's typically open invite only to members of that organization. Am I allowed to go? He refused to answer. I emailed him again. He refused to answer. I emailed him, Representative Lehman, and Senator Holdman, asking all of them. I said, I can't get an answer on this. Can any of you please tell me, is this open to the public? None of them would answer my email. I still haven't received an answer to that. So that kind of tells me where I stand and how they view their jobs as representatives being paid by the taxpayer. So we'll leave it at that. Maybe they're busy. Maybe they didn't have time to get back to me, but it shouldn't take that long to just give a yes or no answer. That video, or that audio, I should say, was provided to me by someone who did attend, who is a member of the Farm Bureau, who was invited. So they were actually able to attend. I was informed that there was also a sheriff's vehicle waiting outside, almost as if they had security ready to probably boot some ne'er-do-wells who might come in and video, which is why there isn't video. People get a little scared to try to record in those. We have some other video that Joshua Kimbrell recorded, Civic Duty recorded, at a Farm Bureau event in Winchester. So he recorded that one, but it was at the fairgrounds public space. He was told that he was not allowed to record. He said, that's too bad. This is public property. Call the police if you want. I'm going to record. They did not appreciate that, but he recorded anyway. He published that on this channel. So good for him on that. After the event, one of the sponsors, one of the organizers of that event, we were talking to them and asked about advertising these events, why they're kept on the down low, why the public aren't aware of them. We were informed that those events are typically for members only. They were just doing a service to the community by letting other people attend and be able to hear from their representatives. And that they had no obligation to advertise it or even let anybody know. If they want to show up, they would let them. Otherwise, tough. You're not going to be able to. You can find out. You find out they would let you attend. If not, I guess you're out of luck. The issue with that was now they've kind of got our number on trying to be transparent and let people get information and have access to their representatives. They have now moved those events to the Farm Bureau office in Winchester. They are no longer inviting anyone other than Farm Bureau members. So in Winchester, it's the same thing as Portland. If you're not paying admission by being a member and pay a dues paying member of that organization, you don't get access to your representatives. There's nothing to it. I mean, there's no other events that our representative in District 33 is participating in other than those ones, and those are now closed to the public. It's unfortunate. We were trying to open it up and let people know what's going on and give people access to the representatives that they are paying with their tax dollars and they have every right to engage with. Apparently, our representative doesn't feel that we're worthy of his respect and to actually be fairly represented. So um, clearly, I'm a little frustrated about that. I think that's ridiculous. I think as a representative, you should be willing to jump at the opportunity to speak with people and hear their concerns. I believe I mentioned in a previous video, but I did contact JD Prescott and said that I was more than willing to host an event in Jay County that I would invite everyone to. I would like to live stream it, let everyone have access so they can ask questions, so that if they can't make it, that they can also get an update. He told me he would not allow me to host it on his behalf. I informed him that I would not be hosting it on his behalf. I would be hosting it on behalf of the taxpayers that pay his salary. And I got no response from him on that. I don't think he appreciated it, but that's ridiculous to me. It's not about him. It is about the people who he should be representing and who are paying his paycheck. So I don't really appreciate that. So with that being said, just wanted to update you on that. There have been some articles in the News Gazette newspaper in Winchester that talk about these events a little bit, these private events at the Farm Bureau office there in Winchester. They mentioned that he's holding them monthly, like the third Thursday, I believe it is. But the general public, as far as I'm aware, are not invited. It is, again, Farm Bureau members only. And these articles tend to be very, very flattering towards Representative Prescott, talking about all these bills he's working on, many of which he's not actually working on. So it's a little confusing to me. Um, but I'm going to move on. That's the end of my gripe. I would like more transparency. Since we don't have transparency from a representative, that's why I continue to do these videos, so that I can give you guys updates on what's going on, and hopefully enlighten you and let you be a little more involved in the process, since our representative's choosing not to do that. So first thing I told you I was going to do last time, I said I was going to kind of follow up on that recording of the town hall that I played last time. So I'm going to kind of hit some highlights on that, and talk about kind of what JD Prescott talked about. Basically, what he did in that town hall was go over all of the bills that I did. He didn't offer a whole lot more than I did in my videos, surprisingly enough. I thought he could give more insight, being that he's actually the author and that he's there at the State House working on these, so he should be able to give us more information. He did not give us a whole lot, but I'll kind of go over some of that. First of all, the first thing he talked about was the budget. He mentioned that they were working on uh, eliminating some fees for parents of students, as far as the book fees and other school fees, to help kind of lighten their burden, because a lot of these schools, the kids are getting a lot of fees, and the parents sometimes just they can't afford them, or they don't even understand what the fees are, et cetera, et cetera. He mentioned that he talked to Dr. Jenner, that's Dr. Caitlin Jenner, Secretary of Education, and explained that he felt that she didn't have a true grasp of what these fees are. I think that's kind of condescending and bullcrap. I think she clearly does know about the fees. She has no control over the fees. That's under the purview of the Indiana General Assembly. So he's kind of trying to pass the buck and be condescending to someone who is far more knowledgeable on the subject than he is. So that was kind of ridiculous to me. He also mentioned that Governor Holcomb had proposed a 29 times increase in the healthcare budget and said it was absurd. He brought up some examples of, I think it was Shelby County, pays the least in taxes, but would benefit the most from the healthcare increases. Um, I'm not really sure on what they actually ended up doing with that, but he talked about that. He then proceeded to kind of go through all of his bills. One thing I think is interesting that he didn't note when he was discussing the budget is that the Indiana General Assembly also snuck in there $1.5 million in raises for members of the Indiana General Assembly. Now, let's remember representatives such as JD Prescott, for example, make over $70,000 a year, plus health care benefits. Plus, I believe they're stacking a pension the longer they're there for working. I think this year it's 4 months. Next year it's like 2.5 or something like that. Couple months a year they want to make over $70,000 plus these benefits, but they definitely need a raise. Mind you, this raise is occurring in a year when they told us they couldn't afford to cut our gas taxes, when our property taxes are through the roof. Um, uh, and it's absurd to me. That's just my opinion. But and I also would like to mention, I'm curious how he votes on this because early on in his career, he voted against testing our school's water supply for lead to make sure that our teachers and our children aren't being poisoned. And he voted against it, stating in a town hall that he did it because he didn't know where we could possibly get the money for testing for lead. So, can't get money for testing for lead, can't get a gas tax break, can't get a property tax break, but they all deserve a huge raise because they're doing such a great job. Just pat themselves on the back and move on. It's absurd to me. So, following the budget talk, he went through his bills one at a time. Um, House Bill 1142. He explains that it came from local law enforcement. This was the bill that will um, allow to charge for labor hours for editing videos for body cam requests. I had mentioned this one before as we went over all the bills. This one came directly from our very own civic duty, Josh Kimbrell. He had some arguments in Winchester with the sheriff, I believe, over them charging him um, exorbitant fees for body cam footage requests when the law states that you can't charge for labor hours. That's what the law says currently. There's big debates on that. Josh kind of ended up winning that battle, that argument, should I say. And he ended up getting his footage for lower cost because he was right. That is what the law says. And I think the fact that this bill is being proposed acknowledges that, yeah, he was correct that entire time. Um, so JD said that came from local law enforcement and said he needed to put this bill forward because of these frivolous body cam requests. I don't. I would argue that these body cam requests are not frivolous. I think that JD clearly doesn't like us, so that's fine. Um, but it is what it is. The law still states $150 cap possible charge on body cam footage. As Josh has said before, I don't know if he said it publicly, but he said it to me and he doesn't have a problem with it. But we have a good feeling that pretty much every body cam footage request now is going to hit that cap. They're not going to let it go for less than $150. So it is what it is. Now, it's worth mentioning. I'll go ahead and, well, I guess I'm not sharing anymore. I'm going to present real quick. Um, I'm going to go through this real quick just to kind of show you something, teach you something else on the Indiana General Assembly website because I try to be informative on here when I can. Let's go ahead and look at this real quick. So uh, here's that entire list. We've looked at this a couple times. I've showed you how to get here before, but this is JD Prescott's page on the Indiana General Assembly website. This is on the beta version. I've shown you on the previous version before. This is the new version of the website. It runs a little bit better. So here's something that you might want to know if you're not aware. If you look at this page, you'll notice that most of these are grayed out, but some of these are blue. And what that means is, if it's grayed out, that means that bill is dead. If it's blue, it's, at least for the time being, still alive. So looking at J.D. Prescott, the bills he's authored, because I don't really care about what he co-authors, looking at what he's authored here, of all these bills, HB 1142, the law enforcement recordings I was just talking about, is the only one that is still alive. And then the House Joint Resolution 1 is still alive. That's the resolution that would take the Secretary of Education, I believe, out of the gubernatorial line of succession. Does nothing for anyone in Indiana. I mean, it's just a maintenance change. You're just kind of cleaning it up. I doubt it will ever in the history of the entire state make any difference for a single constituent or resident of the state. It does clean it up, so I suppose it's worth doing. Doesn't really help anybody. It's not cutting our taxes. It's not helping anyone at all on a day-to-day basis. And in all reality, probably never would have occurred. Thing is, I think the Secretary of Education, I think, is no longer a position, so it's kind of weird to have in there. So they just kind of cleaned it up. Well, no, Secretary of Education does exist, but they they pulled it out of there. Moving on. So as you can see, basically every other one of these is grayed out. That means it's dead. At this point, they can no longer pass any more bills in the House, which means that's it. This bill now, the HB 1142, will now go over to the Senate. Let's go ahead and look at it real quick. Okay. So this shows you that it was referred to the Senate because it passed in the third House reading on February 6th with 94 yeas and 3 nays. Sponsored by Scott Alexander and Sandlin. I can't remember the first name of Sandlin. Referred to the Senate and had a first reading referred to this committee. So now it should get a Senate committee hearing. They can vote on it there. Then it'll have Senate readings. If those all pass, it can be vetoed or signed into law by the governor. And that's basically how it goes from here. So that's the only bill coming out of District 33 this year of any consequence to anybody. And it's of very little consequence because it's really only going to affect people who need body cam footage. It's another one of those kind of maintenance things. I don't know how many body cam footage requests are coming in. It's really just going to make it more difficult for the average citizen to request body cam footage when needed. It's just a new fee. I think a lot of the police are kind of for it because it's kind of a fundraiser for them, because I guess that goes into their budget. So that's where that one stands. So that was his comments on HB 1142 on that last episode in that town hall. I'll keep moving along to those and kind of mention his comments on them. Like I said, he just kind of went through this list as well. He talked about 1143, which is the designation of Indiana as the Hoosier state, which is another kind of goofy waste of time bill. It does nothing good for anybody. He mentions that this is a fun one for him. He wanted to recognize Harry Hoosier as the reason we are called the Hoosiers. I shared an article recently on Facebook talking about how this bill failed. And the big reason is, and they said what I've said in previous videos, is that there's no history actually proving that Harry Hoosier is the reason we are called Hoosiers. There are a lot of stories on the reason for the state nickname. He just happened to pick this one because I've heard some people say it was for pandering reasons. I don't know about that. That's just some people's opinion. He did specifically mention, however, in his last town hall, that he wanted people to know that a Christian preacher is the reason we're called Hoosiers. And that's kind of why he wanted to enshrine that as the reason for our state nickname. Okay, moving on. He mentioned 1144 very briefly. I think the whole point of 1144, that one was where the state would, let me click on this one again. Basically, the state employee salary, probation officer would then be a state employee, which will be paid from the general fund. So then it allows the county, city, or town. It basically frees up some of their budget, so they're not paying for the probation officers. Um, this one died. If we look at the bill actions, it never even got out of committee. That's how it went for most of Prescott's bills, surprisingly enough. So let's look at this one real quick. Again, the state nickname didn't get out of committee. Like they didn't even hear it in the committee. I should say it didn't get out. They didn't even give it a hearing. It wasn't. HB 1145. He didn't really say anything about it. I couldn't really tell what he's saying. I'm sorry the audio wasn't great. I do appreciate the person who provided it to me. But again, they are not very friendly with recording. It was on private property. And I was informed that allegedly there was a state trooper sitting outside, or a sheriff's vehicle waiting outside. Sorry, not a state trooper. Sheriff's vehicle waiting outside made them a little nervous. So they didn't want to get caught recording and get kicked out, is my understanding. I might be putting words in their mouth, but that's how I would have felt if I were there. I almost got kicked out of a town hall with JD Prescott for recording. And he told me he'd better not see me post his video or audio on social media. And let me see how that went. Okay. Next one is HB 1428. He talks about this one and said he wanted to make school board elections the same as every other election. So this is the one that kind of changed the rules, where you had to, basically like any other one, you have to declare your party. You need to have voted in 2 primaries for that party. All those things to make it a lot more difficult for people to run for school board now. This is a bill he had proposed last session and famously took a lot of heat for, by saying that uh, that by declaring your party, it lets people know about your moral character and fiscal responsibility. Took a lot of heat, and that one got dropped. This one actually went pretty far. So this one got a second reading. They began amending it, and it died. And this one is now going nowhere. So a lot of people are kind of upset about this one. A lot of more conservative people really wanted to see it go through. I'm not huge on it. I don't think that a school board needs to be run like every other election, because a school board doesn't really need to be partisan, in my opinion. I do understand the desire for people to want to kind of know like the background of the people running, as far as, are they going to be someone who holds my values? I think the way to do that is to talk to the candidate. I don't know that knowing someone's political party really tells you anything about them. For example, I would think that Republicans in general support the military and our veterans. JD Prescott claims to be a Republican, and yet he voted against tax breaks for disabled veterans. So, as a Republican, you would think, hey, if I vote for this guy, he's going to vote for both tax breaks and to help out disabled veterans. He did neither. So, I don't know what that tells you about his moral character, him being a Republican, but I know what his actions tell me about it. So this tweet came out today on from Brandon J. Smith. Representative J.D. Prescott tells me he will not call down HB 1428, the partisan school boards bill, because the day is the deadline for House bills to pass the House. That bill is dead this session. So a lot of conservatives are pretty angry about this. A lot of people have supported this bill. I think they're giving the impression that JD just kind of let it die. I don't know how hard he fought for it, but people are pretty displeased. He had also promised to Purple for Parents, an Indiana parent rights group dealing with education. He promised to pass a bill for them. He never introduced the bill. They were angry. He promised them that he would introduce it as an amendment, and I don't believe he did that either. So he's been kind of dropping the ball on things he said he would do. And again, lying to organizations to try to get their support and then not doing what he promises to do. This is similar to what happened with another Indiana, uh, I'd say conservative group, Hoosiers for Life. He had promised to support a bill and co author a bill for them. Once he got elected, he chose not to do that. Regardless of your feelings on that, if you promise to do something, my opinion is that you should do it. If you're not willing to do it, you shouldn't be promising it to people. There's a word for people who promise to do things and then not do it. I guess I won't bring that word up, but you can draw your own conclusions. So, moving on, 1428 also gone. That bill is dead. He next talked about House Bill 1429. This one was the one where I had issues with kind of violating a property owner's rights. This one, basically, what he said is the law right now says that if you're going to install new communications or electricity or whatever utility through someone's easement or their property, you need an easement through it, that you need to find a couple of comparables. And if you damage their property, then you need to find a couple of comparables. You damage their property, you basically pay them back for their property. You respect their property rights. JD said that the issue was that this is kind of a new process. There are no comparables for a small easement. So he's kind of removing that. So basically, I believe that this bill says they can destroy your property and too bad. That's how it goes. He mentions that it's kind of one of those deals where he's trying to act like he's supporting rural high-speed internet again, which again, he has not proposed any legislation this session for any high-speed internet, which is kind of baloney because he keeps campaigning on it and not doing anything about it. I guess this is his variation of that. This bill, again, we can look at bill actions really quickly. Didn't even get a committee hearing. It just died. So that's the end of that chapter. I find it interesting. HB 1516. I talked about this one in a previous video. This is the comparative college and career information. This is where they're wanting to set up a new site. The Department of Workforce Development collect and compile certain information about post-secondary education, et cetera, et cetera. I brought this one up in a previous video and showed that this web page already exists. There's no reason for this bill. Complete waste of JD Prescott's time. Not sure why Corey Criswell co-authored it. Maybe he didn't realize that it's a completely pointless bill. He is a newer representative, so maybe he just didn't know either. Bill was pointless. Didn't even get a committee hearing, of course. And in the town hall, JD didn't even mention it. He just pretended it didn't exist. He went over every bill, I think, except for that one. So that's kind of interesting. They just avoided it. He talked briefly about 1517. This was the social media one. This is where he creates this new tax. He kind of said, I don't really love taxes, but I think this is fair. And talked about where the money would go. Kind of reviewed stuff that I've already reviewed. So not a whole lot new on that one. So that is the gist of that last town hall, as well as, I guess, an update on what's going on right now. Right now, the only bill that he has going forward is HB 1142 for District 33, and that House Joint Resolution. So we'll see what happens in the Senate with HB 1142. I know he's got a couple co-authored ones on here. Quite a few, actually, that are still alive. Looks like maybe about 10 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 10. Okay, well, good guess. So he's got about 10 of these. Co-authoring, the reason I don't really go into these is because he's not the author. As a co-author, it doesn't necessarily mean anything. It could mean as much as you just support it. You're like, that sounds like a cool bill, put my name on it. I mean, generally you support it. If you don't support the bill, you're not going to put your name on it. Doesn't mean that he wrote it. Doesn't mean that he's even championing it, though he probably should be if he's a co-author. Doesn't really mean a whole lot of anything. These are usually good ones that they like to put under their belt so that when he campaigns for office, he can say, I'm the author or co author of 20 bills that have passed now. When in reality, I think he's got 3 bills in 6 years that have passed. So, um, not a great record. His first 2 years, he didn't get a single bill passed. Um, and then the next 2 years, I think he got three. Looks like this year he might get one bill passed. So we'll see what happens when that gets to the Senate side. It'll likely pass unless they just kind of get bogged down with other things um, and just don't get to it. Another thing I want to look at while I'm here, let me see if I can find it and not keep you guys too long. Make sure that oh boy, I should have looked this up before we got started here. Um, oh, look at this. This is fun. Um, okay. Issues. Why can I not find it? So what I'm looking for right now is the legislative survey I talked about in the previous video. I don't know that it was in one of these videos, but it was, I think it was in a Bilbrey Live. I think we talked about all that stuff. Let me see what I can find. And I can't find it. He talked about, so in the article in the News Gazette, he talked about the results of his legislative survey. And I can't find it right now. But one of the things I find interesting about that is of all the questions he asked in the survey, again, he did not author a single piece of legislation based on those survey results or even the survey questions. I asked him about that in a newspaper. The News Gazette actually did a special article where they took questions from citizens and then allowed JD Prescott to answer them. I think I discussed it in the past. He ended up dragging his feet, answering the question several weeks late, allowing the Senate to change the bill so that he could just answer, oh, that bill's changed, so that question's irrelevant. So he didn't have to answer the tough questions. Mine was just on that. It was, why aren't you introducing any pieces of legislation based on your survey? If your survey questions are, if you're going to ask a survey question, why ask it if you're not going to act on it? And he basically answered, the surveys are just one way to collect information from citizens. I do it in several ways. So basically, what it comes down to is he disregards those, wastes taxpayer money on postage, printing those out, and he doesn't really care what we have to say. He's made that very, very clear. He cares what his donors have to say. The rest of us can, I guess, deal with it. I'm still trying to get answers from him via email. I probably get an answer, maybe one answer every 10 emails at this point. So I'll continue to try to contact him and get follow up. But that's where we're at right now. There's no longer House bills being introduced. He's got one over at the Senate side. That's pretty much it. I will continue to follow up or try to follow up with you guys whenever something significant happens. I'll have to watch and see what happens on the Senate side and see if these bills go anywhere. If they do, I'll update you. If I get anything else from the town hall meetings, it's kind of irrelevant at this point to hold town halls. I think he did say he was planning to hold a couple more for his donors. But they tend to write articles about it in the News Gazette because they do let media in there. But at this point, he's not authoring any new bills. He may be working on new bills. He may be giving updates on what's happening overall, which would be interesting to hear. I will try to continue to follow what's going on so I can give you updates in general. Otherwise, that's pretty much where we're at for the House session this year, introducing new bills. So they're going to get now the legislation from the Senate side sent over to them as well. They're going to review some of these Senate bills and vote on those and see what gets passed there. Some of those bills are pretty controversial. We'll see if any of those change, if there's a lot of pushback. It's when it starts getting to the end here, we start seeing a lot more special interest groups getting more and more involved and trying to kind of fine tune these and make sure that there's nothing too offensive going on. And then by offensive, I mean anything really counter to anyone's beliefs or objectives, not literally offensive as in they're swearing in the bills or something. But anyways, I think that's about all I've got for you. I will try to find those survey results. If I remember correctly, most of the answers that they discussed that he had asked in a survey were like 50% or less people approved of what he was asking. So it sounds like maybe it worked out because he wasn't doing any bills based on these. And it sounds like half or less of people wanted him to do it anyway. So maybe that worked out, but I'm just guessing right now. I will find that and try to introduce that in a future video as well as update you, like I said. So I'm rambling at this point. I want to thank everyone for tuning in, and I will see you next time. Thanks. Thank you for watching this episode of Rudd's Room. If you haven't done so yet, please like, comment, subscribe, and hit that bell to be notified of new episodes. If you'd like to see additional content featuring Brandon Rudd, please tune in every Thursday for the live show, The Bastards of Politics, which features Christopher H. Bilbrey, Joshua Civic Duty Kimbrell, and myself. You can also check out the audio-only version of the episodes at thebastards.fireside.fm and anywhere podcasts can be found. Thanks again, and have a great day.